This is CJ, and you're watching Murder Metal Mayhem.
This is Pete Altieri of Murder Metal Mayhem, and I've got the privilege of doing this interview with CJ of CJ's Crime Concepts here on YouTube. I've been a subscriber to his channel for a couple months now, and I do enjoy his approach to talking about this Idaho 4 case. So we'll be talking quite a bit about that in this interview, and one of these days I'll end up on one of his live broadcasts, I'm sure. Maybe have him on one of my own, because I will eventually do some of those. But thanks for taking the time out. I know you're a busy guy, CJ, so how's it going with you today?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Weather's decent here in the Midwest, so I'm not complaining. And starting the week out with an interview with a fellow creator, so I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. Now, I've been doing these interviews with the creators, and I always like to know what got them into true crime. So, some interesting stories there to be had, but what got you into this whole thing?
Actually, the Idaho 4 case, I had started my show maybe a week before the crime took place. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I had envisioned talking world events and sports.
Oh,
Uh,
shit.
yeah, yeah,
That's crazy.
that's what I envisioned talking about. And as I started to you know, kind of see the stuff that was going on out there, and we ended up mixing it together there in the very beginning, and then after that, I had like a self-reflection moment, and it was like, if I have this platform, how could I, uh, in my soul feel good if I'm talking about a touchdown instead of a missing child or some kind of
Interesting.
crime that took place. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's how we became a true crime channel.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But you personally were not into true crime until Idaho 4.
I watched some YouTubers, a couple YouTubers with Chris Watts and Gabby Petito there. And then that's kind of what made me go, I wonder if I could, have my own show on YouTube. But I'm a sports junkie, so sports was always first love, and so that's what I had envisioned,
I
ultimately
see.
for the show. But also talking like space shuttle missions and
Sure.
landings and whatever.
Right, right. That's interesting because yeah, mine's like the opposite. I've been into true crime since I was 10 years old. So growing up in an area where the son of Sam was lurking, and heard the stories that get in before dark, and the son of Sam's out there.
Oh yeah.
Definitely was an impressionable thing on me, and that's what got me interested in it. So I would love asking that. Love asking that question. And so when did you change the name Evil CJ to CJ's Crime Concepts?
It was right after the new year.
Okay.
Um, there for, the whole time I've had my show a little over a year now, and whether I would go into somebody else's chat, in another show, or people would be on panel, or I'd meet somebody for the first time, every single, mostly it would be people like, why do you call yourself evil? You're not evil at all. And so to me, I was like, the show, one of the reasons I created the show is because of the isolation from COVID.
Right.
And I was by myself like all the time, and I one of the reasons I made the show was because I was in a depression in a way because of the isolation from COVID, and I needed interaction with people too. There's a few reasons why I made the channel, but Another one was because I needed interaction. I was in a depression. And so I made the channel for that reason too. And the community is what helped get me out of that. And
Okay.
so I always want to make sure that anybody that does come to the show for the first time also has that feeling as well. Like, wow, this community is helping. And so
Sure.
that's really what made me ultimately change the name after thinking about it for a while, because it's like, I don't want that one person that's coming to knock on the door that's never been in the house and been with the family just because the word evil's on the door to just turn around and go somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's funny that you say that, because when I first saw your channel, I'm like, finally, there's somebody else using some sort of evil symbology here, because I've been catching it, because of the name of the channel, Murder Metal Mayhem, but also my 666 seconds videos, which is really more of a goof, a spoof on the whole satanic panic thing. So I don't take it seriously, but boy, I get some people. I just had a lady the other night comment and say, I really like watching you, but I can't deal with that. I'm sorry, I just can't deal with it. And I'm like, it's just a goof. Like, I don't mean
Yeah.
it like religiously at all. I'm not a religious person. I'm not against it. It's just not my thing. But yeah, so when I saw Evil CJ, I was like, "Oh wow, there's a guy using the evil thing." And then I was like, "Wait a minute, he doesn't seem evil. I don't see any, bloody things on the wall behind him or serial killer masks like I've got." So
It's just a red hoodie
yeah,
and a red hat. But
that's
yeah, that's
hilarious.
what I would tell people. I'd be like, yeah, the wordplay, right? It's the wordplay, and that's what I tell people. Like, it's not even spelled that way. Like, it's got
And
two
that's what made me
L's
wonder, like, what is
and
it?
one
What's
E.
up with that?
Right? Yeah, yeah. So
That's
yeah,
hilarious, dude.
but
That's
yeah,
really
that's
funny.
why I ultimately changed it.
And
Is
that
just
makes sense. It makes
yeah,
sense. I know that Murder Metal Mayhem has some limitations because of just the name, but there's a lot of people that like the name because it's different or whatever. So it's all, a wash, I
I love
guess.
it.
Thank you.
No, I love
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Now, any advice if you were to give somebody that's coming to you and saying, CJ, like, I'm thinking about doing this YouTube channel and I know you're pretty successful at it. So what should I do? What would you tell them? I mean, would you tell them to not do that and go do something else? Or would you sit them down and school them on what's up?
No, I'm always about community, so I'm always willing to help anybody that would. I came from when I made my channel, and even still to this day, it's probably one of the reasons why maybe I'm not as flashy as some of the others. Because when I started my channel out, I literally had no help. Nobody would help. Nobody would take their time to show me anything or walk me around. I had to learn everything on my own.
Right.
And so I'm one of those souls out there that always I want somebody else to always have a better experience than me. And so therefore, if somebody needs help with trying to, there's plenty of times that I have people on panel that are thinking about starting their channel.
Mm-hmm.
You can come get comfortable on my show if you'd like.
Sure.
I like to be uh, um, a doorway for other people to be able to make it a little easier for them, because it is
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, you reached out to me and asked me to. You've invited me many times to come on. I just haven't really done lives. I did one actually. It was impromptu on Saturday for Strange Suspicion. I just happened to be on. I saw they were on, alive, and I was like, whatever, and it was a lot of fun. So
Mhm.
I am going to do more of that stuff. But you were very inviting and very
Mhm.
cordial. You were the first of the creators that I reached out to that actually replied, and so that was really cool. And so I'm glad that we're finally getting a chance to do this. But I think that's important. I know I've had. AR Hayes is talking about starting a podcast, and I've been doing a podcast for 6 years, and so I was, all about trying to help him. I think that's a good thing. I come from the band world, and that was a big thing with bands. Is the older guys, the more experienced guys, are kind of took it upon themselves to help the young guys out. Teach them what they need to be doing, not doing, that sort of thing. I think that's a good thing, and that's why I've been doing these interviews, is to try to build some sort of network with creators that are also of the same mindset and not out there trying to, slam people, because there's some of that nonsense. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
friggin' a soap opera with some of these channels arguing with each other in their videos. I'm just like, seriously? What is up with that? And I have had one just recently, rip on me about my video I did on the 400 witnesses and all this. And I was just laughing. I'm just like, man, that's just so stupid. I don't get it.
I don't either, because if I always say it, like if people would take that energy and use it for positive and progress and peace, can you imagine? We wouldn't even be talking true crime anymore.
That's the truth, man. That's
We
the
wouldn't even
truth.
be talking true crime anymore.
Yeah, because people
Uh,
get so upset about, things. And like, again, like, why would you make a video about somebody you don't like? Like, to me, that's just giving them, free press, like, I don't know why you would do that.
yeah, the yin and the yang.
Yeah. Now, we all know that the Idaho 4 is very hot in the true crime community, but have you seen a change in the way people are engaging with it now as compared to when you first started at the very beginning of this?
Um, I don't know. I guess when you're a sub or a member, you don't really see a lot of the stuff, or maybe you're not as aware. But when you're a creator, because you get more information, your eyes and your ears are out there more. And it's kind of sad. You see more of the ugly, just some of the stuff that you were just talking about a second ago.
Right.
You see more of the ugly, and it's just unfortunate. Because again, if people would use that for positive, peaceful, and progressive, energy, and be a collective community and do it together instead of against each other, it would just be a humongous force. And I think that's one of the reasons why, um, you can tell that mainstream media doesn't really like us, because we are taking
Oh,
their
yeah.
viewers away.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's that some of that might be part of it. Because I'm sure they have a boardroom where they got
Yeah.
a group of people where they're like, hey, go out there and fuck some shit up.
Right. Right. They're like, man, you seeing that evil CJ over there? What's up with that dude? Or what about that
Right.
666 guy? Like,
Right.
he's just out of control over there. What's up
Yeah,
with
because
that?
they want you to watch the Charmin commercials on their channel, not yours.
That's true. I mean, it's a business. I mean, all of this stuff, unfortunately, CJ, revolves around money. I mean, even in Idaho 4 with U of I mean, we're going to get into this, but,
Hmm.
unfortunately, money makes the world go round, and people do some dumb shit when it comes to money. And, but I like seeing the different creators do things in different ways. Some I like, of course, more than others, but that's the way it works. But there's always new channels popping up, and do you think that that sort of thing helps the community, or does it kind of muddy the waters and make it impossible for people to kind of figure out who they want to watch?
Well, I think both. I think it's always a good thing to have more of a community, because you're more of a force.
Right.
But like the stuff that, when it comes to the energy, if that's going to muddy any water that we have, because we are an ocean of true justice, and each channel makes its own waves in that ocean of true justice, the muddy part comes in with the energy. I love seeing new channels popping up. I think it's beautiful. uh it's just more of a force, but the energy, that's the main thing, the energy.
Yeah, that's cool. I never realized you were this deep, philosophical. You're like Confucius or something over there, CJ. I'm very impressed with you over there. I just was not expecting that. That's what makes these interviews fun. But no, that's good stuff. I mean, we just need to be treating people right. The comments, I mean, people get crazy. I don't have too much of that. I mean, I've had a few, and if it gets really dumb, I just delete it. But you know, I don't mind somebody opposing me. I mean, my gosh, you can't expect thousands of people to watch a video and have the exact same reaction to it. You know, some people are just not going to like the way I do what I do, or like do what you do. And then, you know, just, I always tell them, just, if it's that upsetting to you, just back it up and go watch something else. You know,
Oh yeah,
I don't know what else
that
to
too.
say, man.
I tell people too, like people didn't always agree that the square was the best way to move something until somebody said, "Let me chip off the corners and make a wheel."
Right. There you go.
You know,
That's
so we
interesting.
have to have those people that say, "No, you shouldn't do that," but then we also need those people that say, "Maybe, yeah, let me knock those corners off and let's see if this
Right.
works better."
And you know, you see it in the comments with Brian Koberger, you know, he's guilty, he's innocent. I try to stay on the fence with this one because obviously we don't know, but what are your thoughts on that whole Brian Koberger concept?
I wish I was at the water cooler, but I'm not. So unfortunately, I don't know either. I would love to be at the water cooler. But I could see things that he is, and I could see things that he's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm focused more on the investigation, the protocols,
Or
you
lack
know,
thereof.
right. That's what I'm, really because that I don't know, and none of us do know except, the person that committed the crime, how long it took, what rooms
Right.
they went in first,
Right.
any of that. Um, but when you have to also look at, the investigation, the protocols, the training and all those things. And because it's about truth and justice, yes, there's people that do commit crimes out there. We don't know them. Sometimes there are neighbors,
Right.
we don't know. But what it comes down to is making sure that the right person is convicted for the crime. And that's the main part of it.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing too is anybody associated with a suspect in a crime like this just gets dragged through the mud because Catherine Ramsland, his professor at DeSales, I interviewed her twice,
Oh, wow.
2019 and 2020. The 2019 interviews on my channel, but she was fascinating, and she had written the book about BTK, and that's why I interviewed her. And then she wrote another one on spree killers. I interviewed her for that. But she's super nice. But she would have been his professor around the time that I was talking to her, which is really kind of weird, almost. But
Hmm.
she was just pummeled in all the media attention because she was one of his professors, and
Right.
she's on like tons of the serial killer documentaries you watch
Hmm.
from 20, 30 years ago up till now. I mean, she's very prolific. She's written like 75 books. I mean, she's unbelievable. But I felt bad for her, and I'm sure she
Yeah.
probably felt some guilt if she thinks that he did it. I don't know. I heard she was a witness for the defense, is what I've been told,
Probably.
which would
Probably
be cool.
because
She
yeah,
knew him.
she did a couple shows after the crime took place. And then after he was arrested,
But she won't
she
talk
wasn't
about him,
yeah,
though.
she, yeah, she wasn't really saying anything. And yeah, I felt the same way as you. I since then, because we did a show on her once we found
Oh,
out. Yeah, right probably about a year ago, maybe longer than that. We did a show not with her. Shout out to you for having her on. That's awesome.
yeah, she was, yeah, like
Uh,
I said, she was real nice. It was easy to get to. We have a couple mutual friends. There's a director that she knows that I know that I wrote a screenplay for. And so
oh,
she
nice.
she wound up that's how I saw, well, like, we've got these common friends. I just contacted her on Facebook Messenger, and it was like 5 minutes later we were setting it up. So it was that easy. She's as nice can be, but I did feel bad for her, and I wonder if that's how he found out about that program out there was through her, because she would obviously be in the know of all the different PhD programs and maybe could have put the word in for him. I don't know that, but I'm just saying I could see where she would have had some guilt there
Well,
with.
yeah, because I think she right away she was have there was like some insinuations about him being like BTK, and she
Oh,
gave him special I mean, there was so much crap
oh
out there
wow,
then that she
yeah,
gave him
that's
special
ridiculous.
access to talk to him and
Yeah, I know
all that.
BTK, her and BTK still converse, and every year, this is so creepy, he calls her on her birthday. How messed
Yeah.
up is that?
Yeah.
BTK calls her every year on his birthday, but they talk all the time still. The book's been written years ago. She continues to keep touch with him, but I don't know, like you said, but whether any of that's true. I did look at my copy to see if she referenced him in like the afterword, because she thanks people, and there's
Mm.
some research people that she thanks, and I was like, oh, I wanted to see, Brian Koberger, that would have
Right.
been nuts, and
Yeah.
he wasn't in there anywhere. And then that one thing that they found that referenced a page number in a book, I actually looked in the book to that page, just wondering if I was going to see, something like that would obviously be a nod to the Idaho 4, and nothing. It was nothing.
Yeah.
So rabbit
Yeah.
holes, rabbit holes. But
You gotta
but
love him.
it was interesting though. Now, what are your thoughts on the frat boys? I mean, so much
Mm.
suspicion around the Sigma Chi thing, and I was watching a video on your channel where you were talking about these rituals and like, what in the world is going on with that?
Yeah, we started getting into like the frats and the church and all that stuff about a year ago. And that video that you're talking about, it's kind of crazy because it was maybe a week and a half ago, and I had done other stuff on Sigma Chi, University of Idaho, shows where it kind of goes through the hierarchy, the labels, the titles, a little reenactment of how they became a fraternity and all these things. We
Mm-hmm.
were kind of going into a deep dive. And then
Very
I had,
Masonic too, by the way. Very.
oh,
I
totally.
used to be a Freemason. I did a video on it. I never was involved in any nefarious stuff, but I do sometimes laugh at the times you're watching something and then just throw out the Illuminati, Freemasonry, and all that. I'm like, man, these were guys that ate ham and beans every Tuesday and just shot the shit. Like, this is not anything like what you're talking about. But it
I don't
comes
know,
from
man.
the Knights Templar, and there's some old school like Freemasonry. There's some weird stuff going on, but this was Sigma Chi. I think created by a Mason who started the whole thing in the late 1800s, I believe. So it's
Yeah, it
modeled
was a
after it.
group of five guys that broke off and started their own because they didn't agree with the new leadership.
Oh,
It's pretty deep, and we did that maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and then I'm sitting a week and a half ago, and I'm doing some prep for a show, and I come across the Sigma Chi Awards ceremony video from 2021, and I'm working on my notes, and I just kind of look up at it, and I see a Sigma Chi first responders pin. And that's what
hmm.
made me sit there and I go, wait a minute. And I started thinking about the delay, and I started thinking about everybody being quiet. I started thinking about Sigma Chi being quiet. I started thinking about all the different connections that people have brought up regarding 1122 and Sigma Chi. And then I'm sitting there and I'm going, wait a minute. What if Sigma Chi actually showed up that morning? Holy shit. So then we started digging into it, And come to find out that there's different fraternities. Sigma Chi is part of a volunteer program for EMTs, and they work from 4:30 in the afternoon until 7:30 in the morning on weekdays, and they run the whole weekend shift. So
Wow.
guess who showed up at 11:22 on that
Well,
Sunday morning? Volunteers, and some of them could have been Sigma Chi as well.
really?
So the president of Sigma Chi was a volunteer firefighter, EMS,
Wow.
first responder. You start to get into some of the individuals and see all the different awards that they've been given since, and also when it comes to when the crime took place. You start to get into a lot of the other people that are associated with the fraternities that have also ranked up in awards and moved on to greener pastures because of the crime. You start to see that it's not just the MPD like we've all thought the last year and a half that has been the no report rank up. It goes way deeper than that. It goes to the fraternities, the volunteers, the departments, everybody. And so I think Sigma Chi and the fraternity, I think there's a reason that they've been quiet this whole time and haven't said anything. And even when you look at the interview from Brian Enton when the crimes first took place and he's
Right.
talking to the
The
president, right?
president. Right.
The volunteer EMS first responder.
Right.
Uh yeah, it's kind of you see him always looking just wanting to look distracted, and I think there's a reason for it. So I do think that there's more than meets the eye when it comes to those organizations over there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, everybody's getting all crazy about the white Elantra, but I mean, what about the people within walking distance, And these guys could have been there in 5 minutes. And, we see that Banfield video, the four people running, from that direction towards Sigma Chi. I mean, at 3:12 a.m., that's certainly very suspicious. And to me, I'm thinking the timetables moved up further than their ridiculous PCA estimate. I think it's more like right around that 3 a.m. time,
Yeah, I feel
maybe
the
right
same
after
way.
that last call to Jack. I think
Right.
that's when the shit was going down. And I've done videos on the 4chan post. I just did a deep dive on our new True Crime Deep Cuts episode about this, and that 4chan post, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that wound up being true out of that thing that makes me wonder how much of it is really true. The nickname of Ethan and the David Baracoa. And, this was long before anybody knew any of that stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
said that it took 19 minutes from when they left till when they got back. So if you look at that Banfield footage, the cops are there on body cam for 23 minutes. So what would be the odds of them being there at the same time this was going on 200 feet away and these people run by? I mean, it's just, there's way too many. This case
Mm-hmm.
is so full of coincidences. It's
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely absurd, but I think
Yeah.
there's something to it. And that was my next question is, what do you think of the law enforcement involvement here? I mean, I come from a family with law enforcement. I've got friends in that business. It bugs me to even say it, but I mean, my gosh, they've done themselves no favors in this
Yeah.
case.
I think I'm going to call it uninvolvement, not involvement, because number one, when you come out and have statements like you think it was a self unalive situation,
Right.
when it comes to the injuries, I have to sit there and wonder who in their right mind thinks that somebody's going to do that to themselves, and with that kind of weapon they would just be crazy. There's
Right.
other ways that they would probably do it, but I don't think that they knew anything, and I don't think that they the more that I get into the university, and the more I feel like they were the ones controlling the whole investigation, and they were the ones controlling the information, and that's why they controlled the investigation. Um, and
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
why was
that,
Scott Green in 2 meetings a day with law enforcement? Who who
right,
does that? It wasn't even on the damn campus for that,
right,
for that matter.
exactly. And plus, even when it comes to the statements in the PCA from Dylan, I even look at those like those were statements that came from a counselor or medical professional that then was relayed to the police. And I think that's how they got the information, because we read President Green's book on the show, and he sent teams out. They set up a team at the administration building right away when they got notification. This was before MPD even showed up. They set up a team and they sent people out to go talk to the fraternities and the sororities right away.
Wow.
And when when LE still continues to say in their press conferences that they didn't know how many people exactly were out front, that tells me they didn't know anything. And the university is the one that said, look, we know you don't want to talk to the cops. I'm a counselor, just like some of these other people that have ranked up and moved on because of this crime. I'm a counselor. You can talk to me, but you have to understand I'm going to give this information to police. And that's where you get the frozen shock phase word.
Interesting.
And the clad in black is not because it came from LE from DM, it came from DM to a counselor, then to LE.
Interesting. Because I've always just assumed that it was like a scripted, like, here's what you're going to say, like, say this.
Suggested questions
So
or
that's
something.
interesting that you're thinking it came through that avenue. That's a different perspective than I had thought of, but I think that makes sense. I mean, that could have been the case, especially in light of the book and what you said about the counselors. That's crazy. That university has that whole town in a death grip. I mean, there's
It
no
is. It's horrible.
way. Yeah, there's no way for a crime like this to have happened in any size town and not have all sorts of people talking to the media, talking about it. There's a reason that these people are scared to death, and there is a reason they're not saying anything because they're scared to death. It reminds me of a cross between like Children of the Corn and the Twilight Zone, and maybe throw in the Sopranos a little bit in there. I mean, it's just like the weirdest place. Like, I don't know. I mean,
It
it's
is.
bizarre.
It They do. They have such a control over that town. I didn't even really look into it until I made the trip out there. And when I made the trip out there, I was there for a week, and I literally just drove and got footage and talked to people. And as I'm driving through that, not the PCA route, I'm going into the outskirts of Moscow, different parts of the communities, just driving around, looking around.
Right.
And that's when I started to wonder how much of a grip does this university have over this town, because I could see that the homes weren't flourishing like the university is. Normally, if in a small community, if a business like the university is flourishing, well, then taxes are going to be cheaper in the city, loans are going to be easier to get, money's going to flow, especially if you reside in that town. And was looking at a lot of these homes, and I'm like, how are these homes not flourishing like the university if they're making all
Interesting.
this money? And
Right.
so that's when I started getting into the university and started looking into the university and looking into the power. And it is ridiculous the amount of money that they get in donations for whatever. And the community is there, just like the University of Phoenix online deal that they're trying to
Oh
get through.
God.
That's a
Yeah.
scam too. That's going to screw the community, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
care. And they have so much power. That's why, Even Steve G said in the very beginning on one of his interviews with Fox, I don't want Moscow to fall apart, but we need people to talk. And
Right.
that's what they know. They know if this university falls apart, the whole town is
Wow.
going to fall apart because that's their money maker. And so
Mm-hmm.
all this healing garden that they have been talking about for the victims,
Right.
they've raised over $800,000 so far. And all they have to this day is stakes in the ground with yarn and little teeny flags marking out gas pipes.
Wow.
That's it.
That's crazy.
And they even said that it's for future tragedies in the latest report when they talked about it as well. How can you
Wow.
minimize
Yeah, that's
these
awful.
victims?
I also
Yeah.
saw that 70% of their donations come from the fraternity sororities and their alum. So
Sigma
that's
Chi made $463,000 in donations for scholarships.
wow. That's just so I mean
That's
it's terrible, but yeah, like we were saying earlier, money rules the roost in this story too. I mean, it's terrible to say it. I mean, it really is. Now, what about the private driver? I know I did a couple videos on him. People were going nuts. I said it was Eric Gower, and then we had one channel was saying that it was another creator and as an imposter and calling the news as Eric Gower. And I'm like, what? But they went on and on and on about it in multiple videos. And I'm like, how are you not getting sued? Because they just came right out and said that he did it. But what do you think about that whole fiasco with that dude?
Here's the thing, and this is we've read the 1,200 feet from Koberger, right?
Right, right,
That was a report where somebody didn't, they dropped the girls off. They didn't stop to let to wait to see if the girls walked up to the door or not because they didn't know if they were going to get robbed or whatever, right? They were scared. But then you look up Eric and he's never had a residence other than the state of Idaho. So then it's like, okay, well, that don't make sense.
right.
Well, then you look up his wife. His wife works at Moscow Police
PD.
Department. But then I th- I don't know. I think it is spelled a weird way in the PCA for PA. It is spelled a weird way.
Right.
And there is no other grower there. But at the same time, it's kind of odd that his wife does work for the PD and he
Right.
does volunteer
To do
ride
ride share.
share,
Right.
for it is weird. You during the
Drunk
crime,
college girls in your car
right?
and you're a married dude. Get ready
Right,
to
and
have
you're
a
about to have a
baby.
baby.
Like,
Yeah, you're
what's up
about
with
to have a
that?
baby.
Come on, dude.
So that is weird. It is weird because if I was in that position, my ass would be at home.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But
No,
my ass would
that's
be at
very
home.
questionable. Yeah.
Uh,
And then the dude's Pinterest. Did you see that with the bat shetty and all these crazy like zombie
yeah.
apocalypse weapons? It's like, could you imagine if Brian Koberger had a Pinterest page like that? They would
Oh,
be going absolutely insane. But for some reason, I mean, nothing said about that. I mean, the guy was cleared very quickly. I'm not saying the guy had anything to do with it, but again, in a case with all these weird wrinkles and coincidences, I mean, this guy just is yet another conversation you can have about this for hours. I mean, it is very interesting, and I do know that they spelled his name wrong in the PA PCA, but then he was redacted in the Idaho PCA. And
well,
so,
this is what's crazy about that too is like I was in that parking lot where Koberger lived. I was there at the apartment complex. You're not driving by and oh wow, there's a white car that you can't see it. It's elevated. It's way back. the guy, there was we read this article. This was from January of 2023, where uh I can't remember what the newspaper was, but we read this article. I made a video about it. We read this article of a neighbor that actually contacted LE months before Koberger was even arrested, telling them about Koberger and him going for a walk for over an hour, and him telling Koberger telling him that he submitted DNA for ancestry results, but
Oh,
then wanted anonymity from the newspaper months before and then left the country. So I'm wondering if that was the neighbor that was 1,200 feet away, but they're
mm.
maybe mixing the both of them together to then make it be this neighbor that lived 1,200 feet away that said, "Oh, I just saw this white car," and it just,
Interesting.
and they mix it in with the private driver Eric's, so it's like,
Yeah.
what is true? It's like a concoction of all of it mixed together, and that's where you get the private driver.
Yeah, and it's almost like some of these stories you wonder if they're there just to distract us, the shiny object to get everybody thinking of something else. And it's crazy. I
Confetti.
mean, I'm a fiction writer, so I look at stories, like this as a story, and these people are like characters, and I'm thinking I couldn't even write something so bizarre as this. Like this is like something out of like the strangest, like Blue Velvet or some real weird, movie that doesn't make any sense. It's really, really weird. It's like watching Eraserhead or something like that. It's just really, really crazy. Now, what do you think about the three Jacks? You got Jack Decor, Jack Showalter, and now I've been doing some digging on old Jack Katovich and his sister Liz.
Oh
These
wow.
three offer all sorts of weird going into these rabbit holes again. But just what do you think about them? You think they, evolved in any way or what?
I mean, it's so hard to tell, man. You could really, like you said a second ago, you could put whatever character, and really, and I think it's because of this gag order that they place right away.
Right,
And with, when you do look at the PCA, it leaves so many questions. So then you have to question so many other things. And then when you question all those other things, then there's all these possibilities too, which is those rabbit holes.
right.
Who knows, man? You look at each one. I mean, just like I was talking about the president of Sigma Chi, you look into him and it's like,
Yeah.
man,
I know you
who
can't
knows?
stop. It's like eating Pringles. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Who
Jack
knows?
Decor obviously is the ex-boyfriend. Certainly, that's always the number one suspect in any crime like this. So, there's a
And
tension there,
even how upset he would get on her social media when they were broke up and other guys were hitting on her.
right?
Even with that kind of jealousy, you're just like, you gotta go.
Yeah,
You
right.
gotta go.
Then you got
Yeah.
Showalter, who's just, I mean, like leaving dead coyotes on people's doorsteps. And I mean, like, what? And then he lived right near there, walking distance. I mean, leaves for 5 hours to drive after he's done, somehow sleeping and not hearing your phone and driving around to your family's home or cabin or whatever the hell it was is better than Brian's alibi of I was driving around. I don't know why that is any worse than the others, but and then Katovich, I mean, he was, supposed to be Ethan's, but one of his best friends. And he tweets out on Monday, the day after the crimes, the best weekend ever. I mean,
Right.
seriously, dude. And then his sister gets that Venmo payment from Molly G, and it says 3:30 a.m. on it. Like that was the day
Yeah.
before. What the hell
Yeah.
was that supposed to mean? Somebody was saying, like, was it, and you're a sports guy, was it like picking squares in a Super Bowl? Like, is that what they were doing? I mean, as warped as that is,
Right.
that's why when I put out my video about these people could have been watching this thing pay-per-view, I mean, I'm not putting anything past these sick people. You talked about how Sigma Chi was. I mean, does that seem out of the realm of possibility for people that do some of the stuff they do? I heard about waterboarding. I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff, so I don't know,
Hey,
man.
anything's possible in the small bubbles that exist where the next biggest town is hours away. Anything can happen, really. I mean, and it's even, even besides Jack and the Jacks and the other players, it could have literally been when I showed up at the 1122 house last November, and I parked in that back parking lot in the back.
Queen Road.
Uh, yeah, right in the, that parking lot behind 1122. When I parked back there,
Mm-hmm.
I instantly was like, "Holy shit! You can literally see everything, and they can't see you." And I
Yeah,
wouldn't. That's when I started going. I wonder if there was a dude that lived
in Queen Road
right there at
apartments.
Queen Road that came and parked there when
Yeah,
he
I
got
saw that
home.
video you did, and I
Yeah.
started looking at that too. I'm like, man, that's the perfect vantage point. From
Oh,
I'm former Army, and I mean, you always train you high ground. I mean, like
yeah.
that's a very suspicious possibility there for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
now, what about I'm going to ask you here, the video you did. I just watched it this morning on the Christ Church there in Moscow. Now, I have not done much digging, and I know it was some craziness, but what's a simplified version, CJ? And I'll link to this episode I'm referring to in the description below so you guys can watch the whole thing. But what is the deal with this guy over there?
Living in another time, man. Living in another time.
Man. Well, what's his
I'm
name's
just
Doug Wilson, right?
right.
He's
Yeah,
the
and
preacher of this Christ Church, but it's
he
like a
loves setting stuff on
compound,
fire.
like very like Branch Davidian, like Jim Jones, like weird stuff, right?
Yeah, I actually I had a conversations with CJ episode with a gentleman that lived in Moscow from age 6 to 18 and was part of that church. And the he described the bubble to me. So if you like I was saying a second ago, Moscow and Pullman are like twin brothers, and then the next town that's not a stoplight, one way street,
Right.
is a couple hours. So they're secluded. So they take care of each other. And so when you're already thinking of a 20, 30,000 populated town, it's already a bubble already.
Right.
And he described this inner bubble that church has as such a restrictive bubble when it comes to even influence coming from the outside. So it's its own, they're literally shut off from Moscow for the most part, unless it's business. They're their own. It reminds me of like a cult or a Scientology type
Very.
thing where it's all controlled. They know your secrets. You don't step out of line. There was even family members that will turn on you and
Wow.
not even associate with you if you do things outside of the church.
Yeah,
That's
which
how
is very,
strong they are.
very Scientology. So these people all live then on this compound, CJ, or is this like a
Not necessarily. No, no, no,
traditional
not
church type setting where they come and they
not
go?
necessarily. It's not necessarily a compound. They live in the outskirts of Moscow, so they're away from Moscow.
Gotcha.
But they live in the outskirts. Now, some do live in the city, but most live in the outskirts, country road,
I see.
not really any houses around them. So, really, their seclusion is their home. Then
Right.
they go to church. They have their own schools, their college, their own media center. They're starting to do more upgrades now to their facilities to offer more what it is it's meant to keep that bubble, that oh, you want to have your own, YouTube show? Well, you can do it here in our bubble. You don't have
Right,
to go
right.
out there.
But there's
Yeah.
Moscow PD, right? Rosendahl, wasn't he like a preacher in the church, or some involvement with that church, or no?
Nate's dad's chaplain. Uh,
Okay.
and I think he passed. I'm not quite sure. I think he might have passed. But his father was or is a chaplain. And so there is a connection there. But uh they they they've had a battle with the PD for quite a while now. They even staged a protest against the masks for COVID, and they actually sued the city and won over that protest for wrongful arrest. And it's one of those power
Was that the
plays, and
sticker gate? Were these people the ones involved in that sticker gate drama with the PD, where the kid and the preacher were putting stickers up that was calling Moscow like a communist, making a tie to Moscow, Russia, and the two cops on the Moscow PD got reprimanded for some underhanded business, and those were the first two cops that showed up at 1122 King. But I didn't know if that church that was doing this sounds very familiar, that they were doing a protest and they
mm,
arrested this kid for not wearing a mask
yeah,
and putting up a fit. And then
yep,
him and his dad, who I thought was the preacher, were putting these stickers up all over the place. And then the Moscow PD stepped in it with, doing some things they shouldn't have been doing with the arrest and how it was handled.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay.
I didn't know it was called Stickergate.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
people refer to it as because of the stickers they were putting up.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that is what it was. Yeah.
Okay,
And
interesting.
they sued the state, or the PD.
Right,
And so, and there's a lot of interconnections, and there's a lot of power, going around when it comes to that. The whole area, I mean, they're so intertwined with everybody already.
right,
And Doug Wilson, he said he wants to make Moscow a Christian town, and that's his goal.
right. So, do you think they could have had any play? Are they any play in this thing? I mean, that.
Well,
I mean,
when
I've done podcast episodes about cults, and there's cults that have hit squads out. I've done
yeah,
multiple Church of the Lamb of God. There's several of them. The one guy, they called him the Mormon Manson because he was ordering hits. So I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. I'm just curious if you think that's in any play whatsoever here.
I mean, when you because we were watching, I was checking out the sermons before I introduced it to the show last year. And when you watch the sermons from Doug Wilson or any of the people that are doing sermons on there, when it comes to women and their rules or what they like to go by, it's like, wow, like,
It's awful.
what decade are you living in, dude?
It's
And
horrible.
so when you think, when I started thinking about the incel at Queen Road Apartments, then I started going, well, if you look at the views that they have when it comes to women and what women are allowed to do and what women where they should be and all this other stuff, basically to the point like, well, it's up to the lady to choose who she gets to be subservient to. You look at that kind of uh energy and with that message that's being put out there, and if you have that small bubble that's only 2,000 people, and you're not allowed to go outside and you're not allowed to mingle, and then you are a 15, 16, 17, early 20s, who knows, early 30s, and you're not successful
Right,
at dating, and you're not comfortable, and you have all these strong views of what's not the Christian way, and you
right.
see the Instagram post and things like that, it makes me wonder too, is this not a person or a group that could have came from there too, because of the ideology of and the views towards women and what they should be doing and not.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've done so many serial killer stories on Murder Metal Mayhem, the podcast. We've done the Green River Killer,
Mm,
Arthur Shawcross. I mean, all these people that murdered prostitutes because they were cleansing the
right.
world of this scourge, and that's how they looked at it. It was horrible, but it's
The
very prevalent.
justification, you
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Now you're getting ready to take a trip, CJ. I hear the bags are packed. You're about ready to hit the road. Anything you want to share with the people watching?
Just going to get some more footage. Now that the weather's starting to warm up, I'll be hitting the road, hitting more trips coming up now, and so I'll be starting the spring off. Like, I'm just calling it spring because I haven't seen snow much at all, and it's
Right.
starting to get warmer, so I'm ready to hit the road. Just getting some new footage. I got a drone now to add to the footage when I go get footage, new locations, different locations. I'm going to be going. You were talking Murdaugh a little bit ago
Yeah.
before the show, and I'm actually going to be going to get more Stephen Smith
Oh,
footage and
cool.
stuff. Yeah,
That's an
that was one
interesting
of the
case.
yeah, that's one that we dug into in the beginning of the show's existence. After a couple months of me doing a show, everybody was talking about the Maggie and Paul
Mm-hmm.
and that crime that took place, and
Yeah.
I came across Stevens, and I was like, whoa, now that's just, yeah,
That's
how is
messed
that a
up.
hit and run? How is that a
Right.
hit and run? So
Absolutely not.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
so
that's interesting. That's cool. That's cool. You can do some footage, get some footage, and hit some spots. So I'm sure we'll see where you go and when you show it on your channel. What speaking of the channel, anything you got coming up? Anything new or exciting you want to mention about what you're doing over there at CJ's Crime Concepts?
uh, pretty much going to be hitting the road, going on location, anything that's breaking, stuff like that. I love hitting the road and I love traveling and I love going to different spots. And so
That's
just be
cool.
doing a lot more on location shows and things like that. But
Awesome.
other
And you
than
do
that,
you do lives every day, right? Or
yeah,
nearly every day?
pretty much every day. I was doing two shows a day there for a while, and then we had a fire here back in August, and so they were doing a lot of work the last couple months with the unit next door, and
Oh,
then coming over here and kind of getting everything fixed up from the restoration and stuff like that. So it kind of took a hit with the daytime shows, but I'll be doing daytime shows coming up again here shortly.
that's cool. That's cool. But anything, I wanted to, like I said, do these interviews to kind of encourage, collaborations with the creators. I mean, what do you think about that as a way of kind of building? I know there is a community already, but trying to get us more doing things like this, to be able to expand upon what we already do. But what do you think about the collaboration here going on?
I think it's beautiful. And community equals more of a force and a louder voice. And if you have more people screaming at the same time, it's harder to shut us up. So I think it's a beautiful thing. It's like a transformer. We're all different parts of that collective force, and then when we're all put together, you can't stop us. And I just think it's awesome. Add more to it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's nice when you see the big channels like Harsh or somebody. He gave me a couple big shout outs here recently, which was super cool. He's going to be doing a live with AR Hayes. AR, really excited about it. And and hitting Lucky and AR, I've done interviews with both of those guys, both super people, and they're doing a 4-part Idaho 4 series that they're working on. So I think it's awesome. I agree. I think that sort of thing is good. I know
Mhm.
going back to the band world I mentioned earlier, we that's how we were able to play shows out of our market was to tag team with other bands from other places and do gig exchanges, and we toured, extensively just doing gig exchanges with bands. So I kind of brought that into this world and thought I would try to see how it worked. And so far, I've been happy with the success I've had. You know, you're I think the fourth or fifth one that I've interviewed, so that's really cool.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing it too, because there's not many people out there that do.
Yeah, I know you said you have done interviews with some of the different creators as well on your channel.
Hmm. Yeah, I do. Even people that aren't creators, I've done interviews with where it's just about, their path, how they, what made them choose to go that direction,
Right.
the struggles, the achievements, the overcoming, and then like the message and where they'd like to be. I think anybody that has a story, I think anybody can learn from and try and do better the next day, whether it's life or work or relationship or whatever. And I think there's a message in everything. So I think conversation is one of the things that real conversation where two people sit down and actually have a voice to voice. A lot of it gets lost nowadays with apps and
Right.
technology and just
Hmm.
thumbs, and you don't get that personal connection. So I think the more that it's promoted, the more special that the message becomes.
That's cool, man. Well, CJ, thank you so much for doing this with me today. It was nice to actually get a chance to chat. I know we're both super busy, and quick emails don't quite match being able to sit down like this and talk, even though it's through the internet.
Right.
But we're both very passionate about true crime, obviously, in this case, Idaho 4. And I'm sure we'll do more stuff together. So safe travels in your trips this spring, and I look forward to seeing where you go on your channel. So I'll link to this down below. You get CJ's channel, and then the video that I referenced about the Christchurch if you want to go down that crazy rabbit hole. So, well,
Yeah,
thank
thank you. I appreciate you, and really, you do a great job out there in the true crime community. And I just want to say thank you for all your hard work and your efforts and everything that you do, because you do approach it with a respectful way, with a logical mind too, with about peace, positivity, and progress. So I appreciate you very much.
That's cool, man. Well, likewise, and I'll see you next time, dude. Be good.